This pricing calculator was developed by Cornell University Cooperative Extension with funding from USDA NIFA. On the welcome page, you can find basic information about how to use this pricing calculator. We'll talk about some details as we go through each tab of the spreadsheet. The Describe Your Farm tab is where you can input information about any other business on your farm besides the cut flower business, because they share a part of the overhead fixed cost. You can enter information in the yellow cells. In this example, we assume no other business. The debt borrowing section is where you can input any long-term and short-term loans to fund your capital expenditure, such as buying tractors. Here we assume a $50,000 loan with an interest rate of 5%. So we have to pay $2,500 interest every year until the principal is totally paid back. If you're paying your interest in a different way, for example, if you have equal payments every year, in other words, you pay less interest but more principals over time, you can also enter your customized interest payment in the last line of this section. In the labor overhead section, you will calculate your overhead labor cost. Let's assume one owner and the annual salary for the owner is $50,000 with $10,000 benefits, and assume the wage for production is $25 per hour. The production hours will be calculated based on the information you enter in the Direct Labor Cost tab. The overhead labor cost is calculated by subtracting direct labor cost from total labor cost, and this part will be allocated to different cut flowers. On the right side, there's a separate calculator where you can calculate your hourly wage based on your salary. This includes all production-related work and non-production related work. Let's put 20 hours per week across the year. Based on the $50,000 salary, the hourly wage is $48. The calculations for employees are similar. You can first use the calculator on the right, enter hours and wages for each employee. Let's assume you have 2 employees and all of them work for 20 hours per week and 20 weeks per year and receives $20 per hour. And in the table on the left, you can enter payments for food, housing, health insurance, etc. for your employees. And also enter the tax rate. Again, the production hours and direct labor cost will appear when you enter numbers in the Direct Labor Cost tab. And the overhead labor cost is the total labor cost minus production-related labor cost. The Cash Overhead tab is where you can enter various costs such as fuels, utilities, insurance, etc. Remember, these are the costs that you pay every year. If you pay to buy new irrigation pipelines, for example, that can be used for multiple years, that should not be entered here, but in the next tab, Depreciation Overhead. We put some random numbers here as an example. You can also enter any other cash overhead items that are not listed here. The Depreciation Overhead tab is where you can enter your purchase costs for buildings, vehicles, equipment, and tools. By entering the purchase price, the useful lifespan, and the salvage value, the difference between the purchase price and salvage value is straight line depreciated over the useful lifespan, and you can get your annual depreciation. The annual depreciation is subtracted as an overhead cost from the gross profit. Let's assume we need to build a new barn for $3,000, and this new barn can be used for 40 years, with a salvage value of 10% of the original cost. Then the annual depreciation is $67.50. Now the red tabs are step-by-step guidance for Cut Flower 1. Once you get familiar with this process, you can enter information for other cut flowers in other tabs. So first, let's enter the crop name here. For example, dwarf roses. In the Project Income tab, you can enter where you sell your cut flowers, for how many stems, and at what price. and this will give you the total revenue you earned from that sales channel. You can also see how much percent of the revenue is coming from each sales channel. At the bottom, you'll see your total revenue for this crop. In the Project Yield tab, you can enter the planting spacing for this cut flower. We also provide some examples as you can see on the right table. Then let's assume each plant can yield 20 stems. Then you can enter the bed length and width and how many beds total you have for this cut flower. Then it gives you the total yield of this cut flower. In the Direct Labor Costs tab, you will enter the time spent for each activity for each bed. Here we put some random numbers as examples, and at the bottom you will see the total direct labor cost for both employees and owners. In the Direct Materials Cost tab, you will enter costs for planting materials, pesticides, fertilizers, and any other materials related with production. Below, you will also enter material costs for post-harvest, and then you can see the total direct material costs at the very bottom. Once you enter all the revenue and costs for this cut flower, you can see a crop assessment in this tab, including crop profit, total cost per unit, cost per bed, etc. And the illustrations next to these numbers tell you what these numbers mean, and also reference ranges for these numbers. Once you have done with the first cut flower, you can repeat for any other cut flowers you have in your farm. We have up to 10 tabs for different cut flower species. This tab of All Cut Flowers Assessment is the place where we put the assessment for all cut flowers side by side, so you can see which cut flower brings you the most income or which cut flower has the highest cost, etc. The next tab is the Business Analysis, where you can see a comprehensive financial evaluation of both your cut flower business and your whole farm if you have other business besides cut flowers. Again, you will enter information in the yellow cells, including the income tax rate, how many years you plan to run this business, and the discount rate. These are used for the calculation for payback period, net present value, internal rate of return, and profitability index. You can find illustrations about these concepts next to them. Below is the overhead allocations. Here you can see how your overhead cost is allocated to different cut flowers and to other business in your farm. Lastly, the Scenario tool is a place where you can change yield and sales price of your cut flowers and see how that will impact your profitability. On the left side, you can change the yield and sales price for each cut flower, and on the right side, you'll see new financial analysis results for both Scenario A and B.